All right, Joy, this is a great question I have for you here. So historically, let's think back to 2013, 2014. And what I would see in the early days of my SEO career is a business would move and we'd be like, no, like you cannot move. This is the worst thing you can ever do from a local search perspective. And what would kind of happen is the business would move, you'd update the address. Now, all of a sudden they'd have 100% mismatch between their Google Places listing and all their citations. It was like the kiss of death back in the day. So what I would like to know is kind of like, has that answer evolved over time? And the specific question I want to ask you is, as of today, if I go to move my office, what kind of impact is that going to have? Do I need to go out there, like rush out there and update all of my citations? What do we need to be thinking about related to moving these days?
Yeah, so it's definitely something that you don't want to ignore for any of the citations that rank on Google. So when you do a branded search, for example, whatever's listed there, you want to make sure that that information is correct. And I'll give you an example of one we came across recently where the business had this problem. So we had this client and they actually acquired another business, and that business had a specific phone number that they were using, but that didn't transfer with the acquisition. So now you have all these listings on Google for that old business name that like literally lead to a dead phone number when you call it. So their clients and their customers were complaining. They're like, we can't find your phone number. We're looking on Google and this phone number doesn't work, etc. So naturally the client was like, okay, we need to update these, right? That's a perfect use case where it's absolutely worth your time and effort and money to get those updated. The problem was, because they're buying this business, they don't have any clue where the logins are stored, and all these citations were set up by somebody else. So they're really challenging to get updated.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what you did here. I think this is really important.
Yeah, so I'll be honest here, Sterling Sky is definitely not the known expert on citations. So I reached out to the guy that is, which is Darren Shaw over at Whitespark. And what Darren told me was a really solid tip that I told him we needed to share with our audience. Darren told me that when you run into this situation where you don't know the email address or the login information for a directory listing, you can simply first create a new email address on that company's domain name. This part is really important as it sets up your authority and proves that you are actually associated with that business and you're just not some like rando person trying to sabotage or hijack a listing. So step one, make sure you have a domain email address. Step two, you reach out to that particular site using that email address. You say that simply the person that created this doesn't work there anymore and you're trying to get access to the listing. Now, Darren did warn me, your mileage may vary. So some sites are a lot more responsive to their inquiries than others. But hopefully if it's a site that cares about their traffic and their quality, they will get back to you and allow you to reclaim the listing.
That's a really good tip. And I assume this has been tested as well. If you're going to try and do this without actually going and creating the proper company domain, potentially waste of time. Like don't even bother as a worst case scenario. Like don't even attempt to do it without a domain email.
Right. Like let's just pretend you're like bobjoe@gmail.com. They don't know if you have any relation to the business. Like there's no way for them to possibly prove that. Yeah. So huge shout out to Whitespark and Darren Shaw for giving us this awesome tip. Hopefully it saves you a lot of time and effort. Also, if you're like, I don't want to deal with the headache of doing this, you can reach out to Whitespark. They have a service that will literally do it for you.
We'll put a link to that service in our description. And I would say citation building is one of those things where if you're not doing it all day, every day, you definitely should be having someone who is doing it all day, every day do it, because there's layers to the game of citation building and it does require knowledge, expertise to actually do it properly.
100%.